does to inform the community, and when they're invited, they want to come and provide the information. It's not required. The public hearing is required, and that's what notice will go out about, and that's open to the public. After the public hearing, it's really up to the hearing examiner how long the record stays open. Then the hearing examiner makes a recommendation, then it goes to the Board of Appeals for a final decision. And then there's appellate processes that can happen after that. But it's also a significant time period in terms of allowing the public to get that notice. Once everything is filed with the Office of Zoning and Administrative Hearings, I don't think a public hearing can be set for 30 days. So that's my sort of background.
Understanding is there's a part of one of discussing the big process, I'll just say, not the zoning process specifically, but just the overall process, whether it's NCPS policy or otherwise, that asks for or requires support from the school and the community and the PTSA. Can you elaborate on what those requirements are and which of those are requirements and which are input and where they fit into the process?
Yeah, and I had kind of took this from the policy, but and this is the meeting here is for to satisfy school board policy. And what the board looks for is input from school staff, PTSA, community groups, and facility staff. So our department, we have our architect and other staff, they look at it and they say, well, yeah, the layout looks okay, and you know they have to give it an okay too and approve it before it goes through our system. And he, our architect, our staff architect, has looked at this. He looks at all the telecom proposals and even the co-locates. There's an existing pole and antennas going on. The board has given the authority to approve the placement of monopoles to the superintendent, though the board is notified, you know, of his decision. So we're not at that point. And then of course we have to execute a lease, but that occurs after the superintendent has given his approval. And then the superintendent signs the lease.
What I've seen, I mean, I know you can even go online and watch when the Wooten High School, when a tower was proposed there, in 24 hours that tower was stopped because the people in the room didn't want that tower. And so when I'm hearing this process that involves a hearing, I would say I think it's really important for the community to be a part of the decision-making process. And my concern is that by the time you get to the hearing, things are already really far along. And one of the things that I've been recommending to MCPS is that the community be a part of the decision-making process, which also means inviting all the feeder schools as well, kindergarten, you know, elementary schools, because everyone's going to be moving through this school. And in a magnet school, really, the notice should be countywide. So I know, I mean, I'm coming from Greenbelt, from Prince George's County, where I am, where a vote was made and all the sites became cell tower sites without anyone actually knowing about it.
I'm going to add a few.
Yeah, I guess I'm new to this issue and I only heard about it, I don't know, maybe 2 meetings ago. So, the board is collecting information, essentially, just wanting to talk to the community, and this is just one of the process, but we're just as PTSA. So, really, ultimately, we can have our vote here, but that doesn't really hold maybe a lot of sway.
No, it does.
The superintendent
Does it or doesn't?
Yeah, it does.
listens to that. I mean, he takes a consideration of when we have a new superintendent, I don't know if we've had a proposal for him before.
It kills
But
it.
they take everything into consideration. You know, it's one aspect. Here's the thing, this is a long-term business decision. So who's here, if this went up 10 years ago, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. So in in 2 years, you're gonna have different parents, you know, especially in the middle school, cycles through, so the decision has to be made, you know, an authority, the board and the superintendent to make long-term business decisions like
Right,
that.
so that's why it makes no sense to have the final vote would be in the PTSA, because that would be the total community. When people live over here, they live over here, they live over here all the time, and they may not have children in the school. And if the school is gonna have the final say,
Well, the
that,
school is the proprietor, the property owner, so it's on this site.
but the school has the due diligence to inform the entire community.
I mean, the Board of Education's proper owner. That's where the notification goes to the public hearing that was mentioned. If you're
Trust
within the
me,
perimeter.
we've done this 2 other times with you guys, and I've never received any community notification from Verizon.
We had a community meeting here in July of 2015.
And I was here, and I've been at the other one too, and there's never been any kind of communication from Verizon or MCPS in my mailbox, on my door, anything.
Well, I was just curious, so who is the you're saying the superintendent listens to everybody and then he makes a decision. So who is he listening to besides this public hearing and the PTSA?
Well, it's facility staff, it's staff of the school, and the input of the community, and the PSTA parents. So it's a collection of all that.
Well, at the Sotel committee meeting, NCPS abstained to vote, as well as the Board of Education. So, I don't understand how that's possible. Why? Why would they abstain?
No, I didn't, I'm sorry, I didn't get the question. Oh, yeah.
Your application.
Yeah, and that was me. If it's on school grounds, I'm discussing the project and working with the vendors, so I abstain from those votes. Yeah. I don't want to be, you know, that I'm trying to push it along.
The Board of Education,
They be here tonight?
should they be there?
No,
That's an advisory committee.
Right, the tower committee, the coordinating group is an advisory, engineering really
It's
committee.
technical planners
So-
and engineers that look at the projects and
It's-
recommend.
So
And-
that's not that's not the venue for them to.
No.
That's not a final
No.
vote. That's more or less a recommendation to say, okay, you met the minimum requirements to advance to zoning.
Your point is, shouldn't the owner be participating? And the answer is yes, the owner of the property should be participating in the process.
The owner of the property does participate in the process because the owner of the property, it has to be a co-applicant on the application. But at the tower committee, it's not that the owner is or isn't participating, it's that Boyd sits as a member of that committee on all applications. He's a member, a standing member on that committee. It's just like sometimes if you go before a body of a mayor and council and someone is to recuse themselves because they live in that community. All right, it's not about a decision.
It's not uncommon for the county, will do the same, they'll recuse themselves if it's on a county building property or park.
I'm gonna, want to answer your question from, more of a PTSA perspective, not a policy perspective. And then, two of the other questions we had are related to what we're talking about, some of the other symptoms. In addition to everything that you just heard here from you guys, the impact that the PTSA can have is, if the PTSA says, yes, we support this, we love that the school's gonna get funding, and we love that our cell service is gonna improve, then that affirmative vote greases the skids to make the rest of the process easy, and the PTSA is more likely to get everything. Now, if the PTSA were to vote that we don't want this, and we have concerns, then that recommendation is gonna carry a certain amount of weight. Now, if that concern is large, and the PTSA says, okay, we're gonna have a vote to say, does the membership want to go forward and actually fight this, testify here, make some noise, and do all those other things, that if that happens, and the PTSA carries through, then it becomes more difficult for that cell tower to go up. So the impact that can have really depends on the first result of the vote, and then the second is if that result is to oppose, what everyone is willing to do to try and shut down that process. Because just like everything else, if there's yeah, we kind of sort of heard that this PTSA isn't fully on board, then most likely people aren't going to listen. If there's I heard that there's a big uprising because there's a high level of concern from the entire school and community, then that's going to influence people more. So is it we have the ability to approve or decline something? I don't believe so. But how much of an influence we have in the process is really up to this group. That's part of why we're here. So two maybe a little more direct questions that were kind of in the conversation we just had a minute ago were,